Today we will be discussing one of the continued debates in moral development, nature versus nurture. This argument has long confused scientists, psychologists, and parents alike. In this video, we plan to argue why it should be nature and nurture instead of nature versus nurture. Understanding the interaction between the two can help better explain individual differences, differences among twins, children's level of athletic ability, and can help explain sensory disorders.